are going to talk about the World Environment Day. As we know that the UN Environment Program, we call it the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, annually organizes World Environment Day to encourage worldwide awareness and action for the protection of the whole environment in global level. So it's being celebrated every year on 5th June. More than 100 countries the same day. This year, the theme of the World Environment Day is to celebrate biodiversity. Celebrate biodiversity. So the India is celebrating now today. What is the main objective of this celebrate biodiversity is celebrated every year. We know that mainly to spread the awareness and to remind the people that they have a role to play in preventing the loss of the biodiversity and preserving our nature and natural resources that is for the future. That's why always in quote I used to say that nature for future. So there is a bear in mind for that. So now, as I mentioned, due to this, the unexpected of this situation now, as I mentioned, the COVID, normally every year we used to meet in a place, in a country to celebrate and discuss and to deliberate about the issues related to the biodiversity. Normally it should be happen in October 2020, but due to this, the current crisis, it will be rescheduled for 2021 of this pandemic, the problem. So now, why you may think of that, why it has been loved by me? Because I have a constant and my dedication since from the birth time, I have been concentrating more on the biodiversity. On that, I have more than 30 years of my experience. I can say that in the field of biodiversity, I contributed a lot to the regional, I can say the regional or the local, and then to the national, not only national and then also global level. I have been working on the issues related to the biodiversity, in which I am taking a major role in the United Nations organization, in which I have been taking part of the IUCN, we call it as the International Union for Conservation of the Natural Resources. I'm taking part from the Indian, the representative to this UNO delegation, and every year we are meeting and then we have been discussing a lot about the issues related to the biodiversity, and I have been working on that. Today I am very proud to say that many books I can say that I have released, and I have authored many books. Out of that, to prestigious, I can say that one book, and in fact 3 books were released by our Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. I think you could see this in the picture, that the release of the plant biodiversity perspectives. And the second book which I released through the hands of the Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam related to the animal biodiversity is a glimpses I released. And third one book which I released by our Honorable, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Rosaiah Garu. And in fact, the book releasing function was being held at Raj Bhavan in 2012, almost 8 years before the book was released. And a lot of the dignitaries are here. You could see that the one forest officer and 2 vice chancellors along with me were there in the Raj Bhavan, and we released the book of the biodiversity in Tamil, in the vernacular Tamil language. And for the above contributions, I received Best Book Award for the biodiversity, which I wrote which I authored in the Tamil. I think you could see that the best Tamil book awarded for the science from the state of the Tamil Nadu. And another book, also the same of the title in biodiversity, has been authored by me, was again consequently in the second year also I've been awarded by the state of the government with a citation and cash award. And third book which I written about the national bird, the peacock biodiversity, which also have been got very recently last year the best book award by the World Tamil Organization. For that, I think you could see that our good friend of ISRO scientist Mailsami Annadure has given the citation and the cash prize for the award of this one. And altogether, you could see that the variety of the books which have been authored by me, as I mentioned, the plant, animal, conservation, including the other one, which I could say that the informatics about the barcoding, benefit sharing in the biodiversity, and then genetically modified organisms, how safety can be utilized in the environment with related to the biodiversity. And 2 volumes of the forest biodiversity has been authored by me, and also the forest biodiversity general, the status. And then down you can see the 2 books have been written in Tamil vernacular. Both books have been awarded by the state government for the best book. So I have here contributions of more than 18 books in the biodiversity, which is related to the conservation, management, and biosafety altogether. So with this knowledge, I think I would like to say a few about what is mean by the biodiversity. The biodiversity is the word derived from the biological, the diversity, we can say that, and it pertains to the variety of the animals, plants, including human being, microorganisms, and ecosystem in a region, in a country, in a continent, or in the entire globe. So all together, which constitute, we call as the biological diversity. And later, this biological diversity has been short and even streamed into a word called biodiversity, which was by the Walter G. Rosen in 1985. So here, the biodiversity comprises every form of life. That means from the tiniest microbe. Tiniest microbe means from bacteria or virus. From that, the biggest, I can say that the biggest one is the banyan tree in the plant, or animal, we can say that the elephant. So all together, all forms of this will comes under the biodiversity. So all these species existence can be, estimated. Biodiversity is very difficult. So far, no one has given the correct accountability of the how much plants, animals, and microorganisms are in the globe. I think it is a very, painstaking effect. It will require many days to count for that. But even then, and it's a hypothetical way that all these living organisms, which are only a number, we can say that is number, it may be from 5 and 50 million or more. But we don't know exactly how much is there in all the composition of the biodiversity resources in the global level. Out of that, so far, out of the 5 to 50 million, so far only 1.4 million have been described. So far described. Out of that, 7.5 lakhs, that is meaning 7 lakhs and 50,000 are insects. And then 40,000 are invertebrates. And 2 lakhs and 50,000 are plants. 3 lakhs and 60,000 pertain to the microorganisms. Again, these are only the numbers which have been counted, have been accounted by the IUCN. But the whole number, I can say that it is still no one has been identified how much. As I mentioned, from 5 to 50 millions. So here, most of all the plants, animals, insects are all been described, and so far. But still, we have the undescribed species. Still undescribed species. Still in the rainforest we can account. And here, there are 3 ways that normally we used to study the biodiversity. One at the genetic levels, and another at the species level, and third as the ecosystem level. So number 1 is the genetic, the diversity. So here the variation, how the variation persists in the genes within a particular species will cause, as the genetic diversity. So it differs from the other in its hereditary constitution, from the generation to generation, or the genetic information contained in its genes. So it is called the study of the whole thing related to the genes, and the related work has been within the species is called the genetic diversity. And second one is the species diversity. Species diversity, which normally refers to the variety and variability of the living organisms on the earth. So here, where it differs at the level. So species differ from one another markedly in the genetic makeup. and do not interbreed in the nature. That type of the study is called as the species diversity. And you can see that both the pictures, almost the human and chimpanzees have identical of the 98.4% of the same genus. Only the difference is the 1.6 percentage. You can see that. I think you can see the both of them, almost looking similar in the gene level. And third one, the study is related to the ecosystem. That means the study on the variability of the various habitats. So this refers to the variety of the habitats. So habitat, it means what? Is the sum of the total of the climate variation with reference to that, and then vegetation and geography of a region, that all together which emphasize the ecosystem diversity. You can see that the diversity here, ecosystem. Number one, the temperate ecosystem. The example is the Himalayan region. And then you can see the Thar, the desert ecosystem. And third one is the forest or any other ecosystem. So this means the ecosystem has the variety of the climate, vegetation, and geography of the region we studies. So the variety or the diversity of the species in ecosystem is normally influenced by the ecosystem where the species exist. So here, mainly the geographical changes within an ecosystem that leads to the diversity, that leads to the genetic diversity or diversity within the same species. The best example set, you can see that Himalayan Thar. You can see that in the eastern Himalayas, you could species one, you can see that in the Himalayan Thar with a lot of hair, fur, everything. The same species which have been habited in the southern Western Ghats, you get that without the hair. So both are almost the same. So here only the ecosystem which determines the existence and the variable. So this is one we say that the variability with reference to the ecosystems. So next is the mega diverse. So based on the we can say dynamism and the species level, their numbers, and then frequency, dominance, etc. Based on that, 17 countries in the global level lying partly or entirely almost in the tropical region, having more than 60 to 70% of the world biodiversity resources, and we call it as the mega diverse nations. When you say that, or not all the countries, only 17 countries have been identified with reference to the species richness and called as the mega diverse nations. So mainly here, the species richness, or we can say that other word, diversity, mostly is high in the tropics, the tropical region like India, and also some part in the cold depth of sea, the ocean related to that. So when we compare to the 17 mega diverse nations, it starts from the Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, Zaire, Madagascar, Australia, China, India, Indonesia, Philippines, South Africa, United States, Venezuela, Papua New Guinea, and Malaysia. So these are the 17 countries have been recognized and conferred that it is a mega diverse because of the richness of the flora, we call it as the plants and fauna, animals, and then microorganisms. So you could see that in the picture, you could see that mostly all the hotspots are within the range of the tropical and subtropical regions, including in India, we have the Western Ghats and then Eastern Ghats and Himalayan regions, which are almost has been occupied in the tropical and subtropical regions of the world. So with reference to the 17 countries, I can mention that there are some of the countries which I mentioned how much we have in terms of the mammals, in terms of the birds, in terms of the reptiles, in terms of the amphibians, in terms of the higher plants. Altogether, the number have been so far accounted by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, we call it as the IUCN, in which I am taking part for the Southeast region. So here, India is one of the richest nations. Why? I'm telling you back. So here, what favors? Mainly the subtropical and subtropical latitudes with their inherent wealth of the life is the main reason. So in addition to that, India, we have one more. Why we have proclaimed that is one of the mega diverse? Because we have a long coastline in the edge of the deserts And then we have very good islands having the richness of the plants, animals, etc. In Andaman Nicobar, Lakshadweep have their own endemic species, species which are confined to only particular islands. And then mountain ranges, Himalaya, the Western Ghats, the Eastern Ghats. So all these factors which I mentioned that which makes and boon to India that we claim that one of the mega diverse nations of the world. So come to the point of the biodiversity in India. So I think this is the recent the statistics of the how much we have, the mammals, and then birds, reptiles, amphibians, and freshwater fish. So these are the number of the Indian species we have: 386 mammals, 1,219 birds. That means the varieties, species levels, and reptiles 495, amphibians 207, freshwater 700. So I think out of that, some percentage of the Indian species are being evaluated from the total. And again, I would like to say that not all, it's all there in the number, but some species are in the threatened. It is threatened in the level. For example, out of the 386, 41% of the total are threatened. Birds, 7%. Reptiles, 46. Amphibians, 57. Freshwater, 70%. So these are the status of the all the animal system here. Next, I think I can mention earlier that the Eastern Himalaya and Western Ghats are one of the world 25 hotspots. Again, inside the mega diverse, we have a richness of the species both in the Western Ghats and in the Eastern Ghats. So the third most significant area of the biodiversity in India is the island ecosystem. In addition to that, of the two forest ecosystem, we have the island ecosystem, Andaman Nicobar, where also we have a high species with reference to fish, plants, animals, including mammals, etc., and then coral reef also. So come to the plants, the forest. So according to the champion, India is one of the, I believe you can say that is a global level. We can say that even we can compare to the Amazon forest, etc. We have the maximum almost 16 major forest types. No other country they can say that or the such a wealth of the forest here. And then we have the minor forest, 221. No country in the world. So the total area of the forest area is nearly 75.18 million hectares in India. So we have in this forest area, the million hectare area, we have 45,000 plant species. No one else. Out of the 45,000, I can say that mostly more than 8,000 plants are the medicinal value. All that. And then flowering plants, 15,000. Gymnosperms, 64. Fern, 1,022. Bryophytes. So these are the lower forms of the plants. You can see that. So we have a variety of the plants here in India, almost more than equal to the 45,000 plants. So among the plants, higher plants, I think we have nearly 2,250 genera. And out of that, 60 families are monotypic only in India. And 131 families are which are very primitive. That means the first formed the plants are including some of the family names I mentioned here in botanical way. It's all only in India. So in this, out of the 15,000, in Western Ghats itself, we have 4,000 species. Western Ghats itself have the 4,000 species a day. The higher plants have been recorded and the families are all mentioned here. And then families with high endemism. There are some plants or family which are, confined to only in the Western Ghats regions. You could see that there are 8 family of nearly, we can have more than some 2,000 species are, accountable in this area of endemic plants in the Western Ghats. So the Western Ghats biodiversity, as I mentioned, is one of the 25 mega biodiversity centers of the world. Starts from the Gujarat north and ends with the Kanyakumari, and the length of 1,600 kilometers and an area of nearly 160,000 square kilometers. And we have the highest peak or in Tamil Nadu, there is the Anamudi, nearly 2,700 at sea level, MSL level, and the Western Ghats have a 40 kilometer of the wide gap separating the Nilgiris and Annamalais we have. And then of course we have a different peaks, Coorg 1500, Nilgiris 2400, Annamalais 2300, Palani Hills 2350 where Kodaikanal is situated. And then in Agastyamalai Hills we have nearly 1700 meters levels. So we have all, as I mentioned, 4,000 plants have been occupied in our regions, in all the plants. Even we could see that the Nilgiris are having high in terms of the species richness, 3,500, Annamalai 1,800 species of the plants, Palani we have 2,378, and then Agastyamalai nearly 2,000 species. And in addition to that, we have some of the plants which are endemic to only particular area. Here I would like to mention that in South Agastyamalai biosphere, now has been declared as a biosphere reserve. There we have more than 189 endemic plants, no other part of the world. So here 75% of the endemics are confirmed in the Western Ghats region, and not only higher plants, trees, etc., shrubs, and then herbs. In addition to that, we have the lower forms of the ferns are all here. So no wonder that we have also have a different types of the forest inside the Western Ghats. We have the variety. We have shrub jungle, dry deciduous, moist deciduous, wet evergreen, cholla forest, and including the grasslands in various batches. So such a wonderful diversity of the forests are here in India, I could say that. But all together, what I mentioned, that the richness, the diversity, the dominance, the frequency, everything have been more and more. Here I can say that. But all together, the forest area now has been slowly is depleting. The area is, I think, is decreasing. During early periods of the independence in the 1940s, out of the total geographical area, we had nearly 33% as forest, as original forest, the forest which brings rain to India. Now the 33% of the original forest, now almost we crossed of the 2020, we have only 23%. 23%. 10% of the forest has been already gone because of various reasons. But even though we have been trying with various levels of the revegetation, afforestation, etc., etc., but again, it's still hard to reach that original of the 33%. We have been striving for that. But again, all these 23% what we have now, among the 23, only 10% of the forest can be able to bring the good rain through the monsoon. So this is that's why every year the monsoon in the Western Ghats region belong to the Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and parts of the Maharashtra, Karnataka, no, having the rainfall pattern is every year it changing because of these reasons. So mainly the biodiversity, I can say that in loss. What is the loss of the here? Altogether we can say that overexploitation and ignorance. Mainly I can say that who is the culprit? The human. He is the culprit now, has been all because of this exploitation of this, the forest cover and depleting every year, and altogether which address to be the biodiversity loss. So the loss of the biodiversity is here. What we used to compare that is a threat to the civilization, is livelihood of the people who have been inhabiting in Indian context. So, and then wow, we are comparing all these laws of the biodiversity almost is equal to the thermonuclear war. It's an atomic war, like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We even comparing that. So all other environmental problems like pollution, global warming, and ozone depletion, all have been now, we can overcome. We can do that. We can go to very near that and then we can go. Even now the COVID conditions now, the lot of the pollution loads have been now decreased. And we could see that a lot of the plants, animals, all now coming close to that. We can see that, but not the erosion of the biodiversity are these. So I think the major cause of the biodiversity loss, I think, is habitat, which are all essential for the survival of the species, is destroyed, or particular species are destroyed, Altogether, it's a great for the economical, mainly for the exploitation for the economical gain and hunted for sport. You could see that both all hunting and the mainly for the test they've been, they are doing for the hunting. See that one statistics telling that the African elephants have been drastically declined for mainly for the tests. I will tell you the number in the next slides. So again, the lions and tigers are being hunted for the sport and mainly for the skin, and then teeth and the claws. And then tudo, a native bird of the Mauritius, was exploited only for the flesh. So the habitat was completely destroyed and thus become extinct. You could see that in the conveyor of the airport, you could see that all the animal skins have been exported from India. You could see that it's all exporting to the other countries. So altogether, what finally it leads to the extinction. The extinction was lost due to the environmental factors, factors like the ecological substitutions, biological factors, and pathological causes. So I will come to the point of the pathological in the slides later. And altogether, in addition to the man-made causes, we have also the natural causes, the flooding, the earthquake, the landslides, and then even for the natural competition between the species, the lack of pollination. And also very recently we heard in the 10 years before also we had a tsunami that also leads to a lot of the loss of the biodiversity either in the terrestrial or aquatic wherever we have. And here the loss of biodiversity according to the United Nations Environment Program, nearly 16 to 20 million hectares of the tropical forest are being burnt. Almost we burnt already. And it has been cut every year for meeting the requirements for what? Mainly for the human need as food, fodder, and fuel for the growing human and for the livestock population. So what they are projected is the deforestation in the tropics is much faster than any other parts of the world, and which is equal to almost 21.5 hectares per minute at the rate of the deforestation. So this is the rate they calculated. In Indian context, nearly 1.5 million hectares of all the prime forests were all felled before 1980. After our forest policy, late after 1980, the law is enforced and that we saved some part of the percentage level of the forest cover. So again, next is the pollution. The pollution is also a gift of the industrial revolution that also has a lot of the serious loss of the biodiversity, either in the marine, very near to the coastal areas of the species, and then also either in the marine organisms or near to the forest area, and then also the other terrestrial ecosystems. So altogether, we have a series of problems because of the pollution levels. Even this topic itself, we can debate for a day of how it causes to the biodiversity loss. And in addition to that, the technology, the motor cars, the air conditioners, the refrigerators, and a lot of the technology oriented also have a serious impact on the climate, and which also have a effect on the various species levels in the ecosystem. As I mentioned, the factories, many factories and power stations which are situated very near to the coastal areas, which also has the problem because of the dusting of either the ash or the other the problems related to the effluents, which has a serious problem for the death and the cost for many of the aquatic plants. And then oil spillage, even during the transport of the oils from the Arabic countries to here, and during the offloading and then unloading, also having a spillover and discharge, and later this also have a serious problem in addition to the natural cause. And the large number of the species now have been overhunting, poaching, and illegal trade. And as I mentioned, in the Africa, during 1980s, there is 79, almost they have 1.3 million elephants. 1.3 million elephants they have. Now they have only 65,000. So almost lost. The same thing also in Indian context also. I would say that every week we could see that one animal of either the elephant or the cheetah or the panther or the tiger we are losing in the nearby forest area because of the various reasons. We could see in the media and then also in the press media. So in addition to that, the indiscriminate use of the toxic chemicals, pesticides, and then altogether a serious problem. And I could say that the pesticides and chemicals, a lot of the I have also witnessed, and physically in various estate area also, they have been using for the eradicate the pest and disease in the the plantation crops for the tea, coffee, cardamom, and so on. They are using the indiscriminate way that they are using and spraying the chemicals, and ultimately it leads to the water and then to the stream and then to the river, and finally it reaches to the human. So all thing is a whole thing in the food chain is been disturbed because of the chemicals and pesticides using in the forest area. And then, as I mentioned, the tiger is hunted for its claw and then other parts. And then you won't believe that snakes and crocodile skin also has been exported to other countries. You could see that all the skin, wings, and then ermine. So almost it's all in the demand for the Western countries. You could see that the one of the guitar is completely has been made of the snake skin. And then you can see that the crocodile bench in US. So we have a lot of the natural man-made causes of the biodiversity. As mentioned by our colleague here, the infectious disease. So the corona. So the infectious diseases, like how it has the impact on the biodiversity. How I think it is a interlinked way I could see that. And the human activities, as you mentioned, again, the human activities are disturbing both the structure and functions of the ecosystem and almost in altering the native biodiversity, plants, animals, etc. So here the disturbances reduce the abundance of the, as I mentioned, of the population, the growth, and it almost changes the modify the interaction between the organisms. Either it is microbes, beneficial microbes, or the plants or the animals. So it way in which they have been almost the physical and the chemical, the environment has been changed because of the disturbances. So in related to that, the burdens of the infectious diseases are very sensitive to these disturbances. It may cause. So it related here the biodiversity. And major processes are affecting infections, infectious diseases, reservoirs, and transmission, which includes number one, the deforestation. It has serious impacts. And then water management through the dam construction and etc. Then irrigation, then uncontrolled urbanization and then urban sprawl. Then resistance to the pesticide chemicals used to control certain disease vector, which I mentioned. The climate variability and change. And then migration and international travel and trade. Then accidental and intentional human induction of the pathogens, introduction of the pathogens. So these are all the very serious cases in relation to the biodiversity and infectious. How now exactly does the biodiversity loss with reference to the land use change cause an increase in the zoonotic? That is a COVID-19. It's one of the kind of the zoonotic diseases. So there are at least three mechanisms at play in between these relation. Number one is the increased encroachment in the ecosystem. That has a mechanism. Number two, the selection of the wildlife species which are mostly able to infect human and or their livestock. It may happen. And then pathogens. So pathogens are being carried by these surviving wildlife species in the area of the forest or nearby area in simplified ecosystem, and pathogens tend to be diluted. So today, what's a serious problem? Today, 7.8 million humans exploit each and every ecosystem of the planet as a whole. Out of that, 4.7 million, billion cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats we are using. And then 23.7 billion chickens on the earth we are using. So what? So we live on the what? A cultivated planet. The term we call it a cultivated planet with new species assemblances and new opportunities for the pathogen to move from, because of the various reasons, from one species to another. That's why there is a one, school of thought, they're saying that the bats are the carriers of the coronavirus, but no evidence at all. But still, there are some views that even someone has viewed that the bird flu virus, SARS virus, and so many things are related to all of this type of the related varieties of the species of the COVID-19 has a relation with the biodiversity. So almost these losses, because of the various reasons, every year, as a IUCN member of the Southeast nation, I have been estimating that how many loss in the extinction. What is the present rate of the extinction of the species? Nearly 9 lakh vertebrate species have become extinct every 1 million years during the last 200 million years. Is an arithmetic calculation. That means roughly 19 species every century, every 100 years. So here, higher plants, the trees, one species has become extinct every 27 years. It disappeared. And 75% of the birds and mammals that have become extinct in recent years, including also now because of, I think we have been also seeing in many media, press and etc. of the sparrow. I think we have been seeing that how it been, slowly it has been extinct now because of the technology, etc., the towers and all these things. So here the loss of the single species is a tragedy. So each form of the life is a, I can say that it is a storehouse of the irreplaceable genetic resources. So here extinction is we know that it is a reversible process. When a species becomes extinct, it sets off a cascade of the extinctions. So a lot. So the world biodiversity, I can say that what I mentioned of the million, 5 to 50 million is all only in the number in the text. But what is the real? We know that. We don't know that. So the world biodiversity under great risk of the extinction in the next 20 to 30 years. One species has become extinct every 4 years between 1600 and 1980. In the last 400 years of that almost 120 species of mammals have been lost. I think they will come soon. I think we will bring our grandchildren to the museum or people meeting places, and we can show that this is the elephant, this is the lion, this is the tiger we lived earlier. This situation may come, right, that you can see only as a museum in the places where the people used to meet or in the park. So that situation will come very soon if the red goes along in the alarming way of the extinction. That's why the IUCN categories they thread. They have been counting. We have been counting every year. What is the status of the level of the extinction? So all the plants and animal species are in a state of the dynamic equilibrium. According to Darwin's theory, I think it's a nature balance in everything. So there is evolutionary changes in time and space. Everything has been taken under natural conditions. And now, because of the various reasons like earthquake, flood, forest fires, and also because of the human, all those things, now many plants, animals have been categorized in this way. Extinction, how? Yeah, number one is the normal. For example, they have certain plants, animals, species are normal. It means those species whose population levels are considered to be normal for their survival, we call as a normal. And then second status, some species are vulnerable. That means those species whose population has declined to a level from where it is likely to move into the endangered category in the near future. For example, the blue sheep, you can see that, the first one, blue sheep, then Asiatic elephant, the Gangetic dolphin, which are all, I think again, we are going to that, will be moved into the endangered category of that. And then rare. There are some plants or some animals, mammals, etc., will become soon as a rare category. That means they will be neither endangered nor vulnerable, but at the rate of considerable risk. So these species may move into the endangered or vulnerable category if the negative factors affecting them to continue to operate. For example, the Asiatic cheetah, which is supposed to be the fastest runner among the animal, which will, I think, soon will be rare. And then pink-headed duck or tudo. So this is only, occupied in the Andaman Nicobar. I think this will be soon become rare. So similar way, endemic. So I think these are the one which are confined to only particular area, particular ecosystem, particular forest, and particular, we can say, subtropical region. So these species which can occur only in a restricted area, usually isolated by the natural geographical barriers, where they cannot move anywhere. For example, Andaman Deal, the first one, and then the Nicobar Pigeon, and third one is Andaman Wild Pig. So these are one which are having endemic only to the particular area that they cannot move. And again, these are also under considerable risk because of the human intervention. So we calculated how many species are threatened. Nearly 16,119 species are threatened with extinction. Out of that, we can say that even 1.5 or 5 and so on. Animals, 7,725. Plants, 8,000 nearly. And then other groups of plants, I can say that birds, 12%, or 1 in 8. Mammals, 1 in 4. Amphibians, which can thrive both in the aquatic and terrestrial, 1 in 3. Turtles and tortoise, 42%. And you could see that in the media every week. We could see that a lot of the tortoise and turtles are, star tortoise, turtles are exported from our coastal regions to the other countries. You could see all in the airports. And then conifers, plants, beautiful plants, the needle type of the plants, 1 in 4. And then cycad, 52%. So I think we accounted that many species are become now threatened. And then altogether again, everything have been mentioned, how many percentage, all these things. So not only that, animals also. So wildlife also have been in danger because of the problems related to the human, and ultimately all these wild species will alter your food chain. Almost it upsetting the delicate balance between the predator and the prey. You could see that all the countries have been, how much they are spending crores of money, millions of money for safeguarding in the Arctic regions. And then you can see that the bullfrogs, this one. So almost we have been working on a lot on that regions, and plants also in the danger. You could see that these are the plants. So almost 10% of the world, the vascular plants have been totally in the degrees of the threat. So based on all these problems and realizing the situation, and Indian government, we started working on that, how to save our biodiversity of the resources in the Himalaya, Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, including the aquatic ecosystem like Andaman, Nicobar and so on, and marine ecosystem. Altogether, we worked on that. We have to save all the valuable species of the plants, animals, etc., of their the richness to be saved. And then we wanted to make it as a special provision. We made it, and then the total area where we have the richness of the certain animals, certain species have been protected from the human intervention, and that is the genesis of the biosphere resource. So in India, we have nearly 11 biosphere resource area, and almost we protected those areas. For example, the Nilgiri biosphere, where we have the states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka in the Western Ghats regions. We have proclaimed the area of the total forest as the new biosphere reserve. We call it the Nilgiri in 2000. And then Gulf of Mannar, very near to our Rameshwaram. And then Gulf of Mannar biospheres have been almost even proclaimed, declared as the biosphere reserve in 2001. Similar way, so far we have 11 biosphere reserves we have in India, and we protected all those areas, the biosphere resource for saving or the protecting or conserving the species of the both plants and animals. And again, I would like to say proudly here, I have also taken part in this committee in the Ministry of Environment and Forest. We call as the MAP, Man and Biosphere Program, for proclaiming of these or the declaring of these biosphere reserves by the UNESCO. I have taken part, and I have given my input for the all in the meetings. So this is one of the biosphere reserves we have, and almost in addition to that, Tamil Nadu has 3 biosphere reserves. One is the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, and second is the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve, and the 10th one is the Agastya Malai Biosphere Reserve, which are 2016 have been declared. So in addition to that, we have all the states: West Bengal, Uttarakhand, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Andaman Nicobar, and then Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Kerala, and Sikkim. All the states, almost all the states have been now having their own the territory of the biosphere resource for the conservation of the biodiversity resource. So these are the area how much we have in the biodiversity resource we mentioned. So one, I would like to say that Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, as I mentioned, it was declared by the UNESCO, which is one of the tropical terrestrial environment, and the total area where occupied by Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka has been given. So altogether, so mainly here to conserve the species of the most valuable one of the in the area, and then plants, animals, and etc. in various the subforest region of this the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. And then, as I mentioned, the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere. So we have at Rameshwaram, and the center is at the Ramanathapuram, and the Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve we call the Kompart, and which has been declared in the 1989. The reserve forest, which has a total area of nearly 10,500 square kilometers. Having the nearly 27 islands in this region, mainly to here protect the resources of the biodiversity here, mainly the coral reefs, and then a lot of the ornamental fishes, etc. So next, the conservation. We know that how much in number, we know what is the status, and how much we have, how many species are threatened, how many species are extinct, and the level rare species, etc. And then also we have said that we have taken initiative through the various agencies, etc. But what action really need to conserve our biodiversity resources here to mainly conserve? Conservation, which leads to the essential of the ecological diversity, to preserve for the welfare, as I mentioned, for the future, food chains. So the lot of the international moves are now in focus. Just for example, I mentioned here, these are the various, the initial during the 1990s, they've taken serious steps to conserve the biodiversity conservation aspects as a global level, we have mentioned. And still we have been following one of the Earth Summit, the Agenda 21, have been working on that. And again, every year we are meeting, and then we are taking actions against the conservation of the biodiversity resources in the entire global level. So there are 2 aspects of the biodiversity resources. One is the ex situ, the name called the ex situ. It means outside the areas. That means outside the forest area, how we can do possible way to conserve the resources, our biodiversity. Here we can bring the animal or plant habitat where it has become extinct. In the original area, bringing here we can save, or we can conserve, or we can protect, and then we can save it conservation. So here a lot of things are there. One is the seed banks, the botanical gardens, horticultural gardens, recreational gardens, and then all we have now zoo, everything which comes under the ex situ, the conservation. And the in situ conservation, as I mentioned, this also in the natural habitat itself, we can conserve. We call it as the terminology national park and sanctuaries we have. And then we call it as the biosphere resource, as I mentioned. This is one of the action plan taken by the government. And the natural resource we have. And then we have the reserved and protected forest, and then preservation plots, and then reserve forest. So almost we have, a lot of the conservative initiatives we have taken to conserve that one, and realizing the problem of our basmati rice, then our the neem, and then also the manjal, the turmeric, and all these problems came of the IPR issues. Then also we think of the third one, conservation, which are related to the agro biodiversity conservation. This is also how to conserve not only the forest related one, and then also we have to conserve the cultivated crops of having the natural wealth of our country, and also have been comes under this category we call as the agro biodiversity conservation. Here also we are conserving through the botanical gardens, through the agriculture department, seed banks, which are having the responsibility for the agro biodiversity conservation. And I think ICR is taking a lead role in the conservation of the agro biodiversity issues. So what biodiversity action plan? What as an individual, what as a community, us as a whole, what we can take for the conservation issues and action plan. So what we required is the number one, strengthen and enhance what the role of the botanical, herbal, and home gardens, wherever for the conservation of the existing plant collections. Here we can do it. So every individual, every collective, every NGO, we can do it. And then consolidate and increase and update of the knowledge on the ecosystem and the plants, either plants or animals. And strengthen and support of the community conservation are the areas, including the sacred sites. So originally, traditionally, we have a lot of the temple lands. Once it has been declared as the sacred groves areas. Normally, the sacred groves have the trees which are having a uniqueness of that one. And mostly the elderly person used to go there and then sit, and they used to have the chat, and then also having the breath of the good air inside the sacred areas. We call it sacred groves. In those days, we have every temple must have a sacred groves. That is the purpose. Even now, every temple have a sacred tree now, a sacred tree we have. So, and then conserve, threaten all the endemic species of which needs for the conservation significance, and then tackle the non-utilization threats to the natural ecosystem, strengthen it is a government role, strengthen and enhance the role of the zoological parks, aquarium, and also the wild animal breeding facilities that are within. So what we take all those things based on that. Earlier, I think before, 1990, we don't have the awareness. That's why the forest department has brought a lot of the initiatives to conserve the forest areas, etc. And with the involvement of the local, the tribals, indigenous knowledge people, all that. So I think this is one we have taken a lead among, with the help of the forest department in the Western Ghats. We took a lot of initiatives, and then with the help of them, we did some conservative effects there. And altogether, I think not only that, we need a lot to conserve for the forest resources, mainly the biodiversity resources. Earlier, we don't have what? Because of the lack of education, the training and awareness, and the education about the complex biodiversity issues we don't know. It's also one of the, earlier it was a biggest stumbling block to conserve sustainable use and achievement of the what we heard earlier. And now I think almost everyone that know the knowledge of the biodiversity and related issues, because now the children, even the school-going children, knows about the biodiversity, the forest wealth, and the conservation issues, etc. I think now this is the time to again rethink of that one. We can inculcate the importance of the biodiversity conservation from the child onwards. So this is one of the slides where we have taken a role in the biodiversity conservation among the tribals of the Virudhunagar district, very near to the Tanipari region, one of the tribal health area. We did a lot of work on the conservation, the measures in that area. So again, what we require, not only the government or the institutions like colleges, universities can take lead in the conservation issues. I think here the NGOs, the public organization can also take a role in strengthening the biodiversity conservation issues. For this, that can be enhanced the biodiversity related education in the formal education system or in the college level, or strengthen the non-formal. That is more important. Non-formal education on biodiversity, and including through the folk, media, and so on. And then what we require is the build capacity of the scientists and the other academics related to the biodiversity. So we know we have, I think, Indian government, even all the federal governments, we know that the policies and legal measures, and we know that, but the law and force has to be enforced in a thrust way, that implement forest and wetland policy. We have to take care of that one. And then we have to implement the marine area policy. We have to do, and not only that, we have also to implement a national, that one we are focusing is the urban biodiversity, national urban biodiversity policy also. I think we have taken a lot of initiatives here. So we not only for the forest area or adjacent forest area or the agro biodiversity area, we have to consider in the cities also, in the cities and towns also, we have to consider for the implementation of the biodiversity and related issues for the wealth and health of the people. And we have to work and realizing all these. Now the Indian government has a separate authority for the conservation of the biodiversity resources, realizing the problem of what I mentioned about the Basmati. As I think we fought like anything in the international court, and then neem, and then turmeric, and all that, realizing all this situation. And the Minister of Environment and Forest, developed a separate authority. We call it the National Biodiversity Authority, was established in Chennai and during 2003 by the central government. So mainly to implement the Biological Diversity Act of the 2002. So here we call as the NBA. The NBA is a statutory body, and it brings for the advisory function of the conservation, sustainable use of the biological resource, and also the fair, equitable sharing of the benefits and use. So that we have been doing of that and realizing all these things. Now in every state, they have been implementing the State Biodiversity Board, we call it as the SBB. Under the State Biodiversity Board of the state, they have constituted village level committee, we call it the Village Forest Council, and all these have been now become a statutory body of the biodiversity. And the main role is I think they can promote the conservation and also for using of the sustainable way. And not only that, they can also document. They can also document of their own resources, what they have in and around their villages. So they can document it, because it will not be later, it will not be a conflict that if you have an IPR issue of that one. If you have a document of all the resources documented and they have been protected for that, and later we can have a royalty if suppose the resources of the biodiversity have been utilized by either our own country or the other one of the other foreign countries. So even now the sending of exporting, or even for sending of any soil sample, or for identification of any plant, animal, insect species, now I think it has been routed. It should be routed through the National Biodiversity Authority. We cannot. So individually we cannot send anything, or even just for the identification, including the microorganism. So that a statutory conservation aspect has been taken by the National Biodiversity Authority here, and they have been taking a lot of initiatives through this. And altogether, the biodiversity, I think now in 2020, and then we have been wonderfully, we have been doing in India. Only thing still we have been working on that. Every year we have been trying hard to bring 2% at least the forest, through the reforestation or afforestation or the social forestation or any other source of the forestation. And not only that, and also conserving the animal biodiversity resources. So to conclude that, the flocks of birds have flown away. Your solitary too has drifted away. And I wander alone in the silent Western Ghats surround to catch a glimpse of the ancient ecosystem somewhere around. So with this short of the discussion related to the biodiversity, conserve our biodiversity resources. Everyone should have a knowledge, and that we should have a ethics to conserve our resources. Thank you for the patient hearing.